So look, we got the heat tonight, but this is a Panther heavy show today as we're celebrating what I believe is the greatest moment in Panther history last night. We go out to the Johnny Cuba guest line here. Of course, all guests on ZASLOW Show 2.0 are brought to us by Johnny Cuba, the official beer of ZASLOW Show 2.0. European roots with that Caribbean soul, a refreshing German lager in a can. That's what we're talking about. Pick up some Johnny Cuba. Pick up a six-pack at your local Sedano's, Presidente, Winn-Dixie, Fresco y Mas. Always drink responsibly. And, of course, don't forget Johnny Cuba's mantra, stay tranquilo. And joining us now is the workhorse, Panthers Radio Voice, Doug Plagens here with us, fresh off of a series-clinching Eastern Conference Championship clinching call last night as the Panthers are back in the Stanley Cup Final for the first time in 27 years. Doug, thanks so much for being on with us. First off, this is the first time, obviously, you've been with the team for 8 years now, you told me. So this is the first time, obviously, that you've been in this spot with the team being this good or advancing this far. Do you think going into the game last night, okay, what will my final call be if they win the Eastern Conference Championship? Do you allow yourself to think about it, or do you just want it to be completely organic?
I'm a big well, thanks for having me. First of all, this is a celebration day. I know the job's not done and there's going to be a Stanley Cup Final series, but we've got at least a little bit of time here. So I want everybody to enjoy this, take it all in, and I'm sure everybody's going to have a great weekend. But in that moment, Zaz, I'm big on just approaching everything organically. Every moment is its own. And just for example, no two wins are alike. It's one of the beauties of sports. It's why we watch, because every night you might see something that you've never seen before. And for that game to be decided on a moment like it was last night, Matthew Tkachuk scoring with under 5 seconds to play, and then the last face-off basically becoming a formality at that point. It allows the final seconds to tick off and the place just erupts. It was unbelievable. I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that, I didn't think ahead at some point and say, well, we're that close to getting this thing done here. We're that close to seeing the Panthers move on to the Stanley Cup Final. But I think like the players, like what the coaching staff has stressed, one of the most important things you can do is just stay in the moment. And I think that lends itself to, presenting the moment in the best way possible. So all I can ever say is I hope everybody enjoys listening as much as I enjoy doing these broadcasts, because it's been truly an honor to be along for the ride with this great team and to just bring these moments, help bring these moments to life. It's been unbelievable to just try and bring these moments to the folks out there tuned in. So I can't even put it into words how exciting this has been.
Are you nervous at all during the broadcast last night?
Nervous. You know what's funny is I think it almost takes me back to, I had some people ask me that same thing back when I first got the job. Like, my dream was to be a broadcaster in the National Hockey League, to do play-by-play in the National Hockey League. And, I was coming off 7 seasons in the minor leagues, and I was coming off, 4 years in the American Hockey League. And I remember a couple of people asking, are you nervous to call games in the NHL? And you learn pretty quickly that there are more people listening. There are more people paying attention. Calls of big plays have a further reach. They could end up getting picked up, on national TV or wherever. So you do learn that. But I would tell you this, in the moment, with the headset on, calling a game, that's where I am most comfortable. But at the same time, I think like even the great athletes would tell you, even the guys who've done it a million times, in those big moments, you do get a little bit more revved up. You do sense the magnitude of what's going on. There's no question that a clinching game in the Stanley Cup playoffs feels a little bit different than, sometime in game 1 through 82 during the regular season. Everything gets ramped up. You can tell there are more people paying attention. But at the same time, there's nowhere I'd rather be, and there's not really anywhere I feel more comfortable than with the headset on.
What were you thinking when they went to review last night, the goal? Because they show the replay. I'm watching here in the ZASLOW Mansion family room with my son, and they're showing the replay, and I'm like, there's very little there. I think we're good. And then, of course, when the referee came out after like 30 seconds, like, oh, that was a quick review. We're definitely going to be okay. Because if they were overturning that, he would have had those headsets on for 5 minutes. So when they go to the review initially, what were your thoughts?
When they went to the review, I honestly wasn't all that concerned. I was more thinking, okay, this thing's getting reviewed because more than anything, yeah, there was a little bit of activity going on in front of the net. And, maybe until you see a replay, you can't fully grasp exactly what kind of contact was made, things like that. But what I was thinking in the moment was there's a team season potentially on the line here at this point, and they're doing their due diligence to make sure that this is, going to be a good goal and everybody's going to be able to just, and everything's going to be able to just carry on from there. So that was really what was going through my mind. I wasn't in doubt at all. I thought it was going to be a good goal as soon as, even when it went to review, I wasn't very concerned. That was really the only thing that went through my mind is, okay, this is a crucial goal at a very important moment with just seconds left. Under 5 seconds left. I think 4.3 when the puck went in. They adjusted the clock to 4.9. Carolina's going to have nothing they can really do in the last 4.9 seconds. So they're making sure that this thing is a legitimate goal, which it absolutely was. So, yeah, I wasn't all that concerned. I think it was just something that was being looked at because of the magnitude of the moment and what was on the line.
Can you describe the atmosphere? Can you describe the crowd to me last night?
Absolutely electric. And I can tell you all the way through these playoffs, it has been. And I want to say thanks. I know you have, all the people tuned in who've been out to games throughout the playoffs and throughout the season. I want to thank everybody for the support, for coming out, for checking out the action, and everybody who's been out for these playoff games. You've been a part of just an absolutely electric environment. And I can tell you, the players, the coaches, they feel it too. They talk about it every single day. It's been something that has been definitely noticed, and it's been a huge advantage for this Panthers team to have that buzz in the building, to have that crowd behind them. Last night it was announced at 20,065, I believe is what I had on my sheet. It was packed to the rafters last night inside FLA Live Arena. And if I could personally thank all 20,065 people, I would. But thanks for everybody who came out. You've been a part of an absolutely amazing environment. Everywhere across the league in the Stanley Cup playoffs is loud, electric. You can feel it. But that was something unique and special there, especially last night. And you could tell everybody was so locked in and so tuned in to just the magnitude of the moment, as you talked about right off the top. This is the second time in team history the Panthers are going to the Stanley Cup final, and the people reacted as such last night. It was wild in there.
So give me your thoughts on this. For 27 years, up until this year, the undisputed greatest goal in Panther history, it's right here. I got it's diagrammed. I got it's a poster here, and it's framed. It's Billy Lindsay, and it's the whole diagram of the play. Gets past the Hall of Famer Ray Bourque and scores the series clinching goal in 97, right there on my wall. That's been the undisputed greatest goal in Panther history. I don't believe it is anymore. I believe when Tkachuk scored the winner in Game 7 against Boston, that became the greatest goal in Panther history. I think Billy's goal gets bumped down 27 years later to number 2. I want your thoughts on that, and I also want your thoughts on last night being what I believe not the greatest goal in Panther history, because I think it's Tkachuk Game 7, but last night the greatest moment in Panthers history.
Well, I tell you what, you mean Verhaeghe Game 7 against Boston is what you were talking about?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you so much for correcting me. Verhaeghe Game 7, yes.
There have been so many clutch performances throughout these playoffs across the board, but you look at I think if you had to do it, and this is something I want to talk to Billy about, because I know he's talked about it a lot, because he's said he loves this franchise. His passion for the franchise runs so deep. And he's been saying for a long time that he'd love to see a string of big time goals that would go up in that realm of the biggest goals in team history. But I think what you look at now, it's almost like at this point you break it into tiers in a way. Billy's goal is always, in my opinion, going to have an important place on the mantle of Panthers history. That was the clincher, the eventual game winner to win their first playoff series in team history. It took place at the old building at Miami Arena for a number of reasons. It was part of the year of the Rat. It was part of a run to the Stanley Cup final for an upstart team in its third year in existence. It was kind of the goal that put the Panthers, one of the moments that put the Panthers on the map, and it was a real rallying point for a lot of people. And Billy, to this day, is still one of the most beloved figures in the history of the Florida Panthers. And obviously, that goal right there is what a lot of people would point to as one of their greatest Panthers and Billy Lindsay memories. So I'm sure, I think you look at it, that almost goes in one tier. But now you have the new era that's taken place here, and this group. And I don't know that we're going to be able to fully give an answer on this until the dust settles and we have the whole body of work and we have all the goals that we're able to put them all next to each other and see, okay, where do they all rank next to each other? But what I can tell you, what's been so impressive, it's been a whole team where, and I've asked a number of the guys this, you have a whole roster of guys where nobody shies away from the moment. And it's truly impressive. And it starts with the leadership on the ice. Obviously, the coaching staff's done an unbelievable job. And Bill Zito, congratulations to him for the nomination for GM of the Year coming out yesterday. Well-deserved for putting this roster in place. But you've got a high-character roster of guys where nobody shies away from the moment. You go down this entire roster in this playoff run, Zaz, every guy has had a big moment. And it's, of course, Matthew Tkachuk right now getting the headlines, and rightfully so. He's got 3 overtime winners in the playoffs. In the Carolina series, he had 2 overtime winners, a winner in regulation that may as well have been an overtime winner because it came in the final seconds. And then he assisted on the Game 3 goal, which was the only goal scored in the game, proved to be the winner. He's factored in to other game-winning goals in this playoff run. But you go down the list, Nick Cousins had the overtime winner against Toronto to seal that series. Sergei Bobrovsky has been as big game as you can be throughout these entire playoffs. Carter Verhaeghe had the overtime winner. You go back to Game 6 against Boston, that wild 7-5 game, and during the back and forth, Zach Dalpe scored his first Stanley Cup playoff goal, and Eetu Luostarinen had a huge goal late in that one. I believe it was the 6th Panthers goal before they ultimately won that game 7-5. So you go down this roster, and there have been, every guy has had his moment. Brandon Montour tying Game 7 against Boston with under a minute to play, and obviously scoring 6 goals in that series. What an offensive performance that was for a blue liner. When the dust settles, we'll be able to go back through everything and see where everything stacks up. But I can tell you right now, and I'm sure you're thinking the same thing as somebody who's been following this team for its entire existence, it's exciting to be able to have this many to choose from, this many to go back through, and to have all these moments that I know in the middle of August and, September, when we're getting ready for next season, we're going to be going back through all this and looking through it and recalling it all fondly. And it's been so exciting to be a part of. And like I said, just an incredibly dedicated, great group of guys who have battled to get into the playoffs, and they've earned every second of this.
Lastly here, Doug, the 4 overtime game, I got to ask you about that before you get out of here. From a viewer perspective, from a fan perspective, I found it to be a miserable experience. And my team won. Like, they won, and it was miserable. I don't want to ever go through that again. You were working the game. You're calling the game by yourself. So what was that experience like? And was there ever a moment in the 4 overtimes where you said to yourself very quietly, I don't even care who scores. I want this to end?
I didn't care if it went to 25 overtimes if we got the win. I was there, as I tell a lot of people this, I was there to win a ball game that night. I didn't care how it got done. I didn't care how long it took. I didn't care if McDonald's started and then stopped serving breakfast by the time that game-winning goal was scored. I was there to see the Panthers win a game that night, and just thankful that they did. Going back through it, it was a long game. And I got a ton of tweets and messages from a lot of folks out there who stayed up late with the broadcast. So I want to thank everybody for, and I tried to respond to as many people on Twitter as I could. I want to thank everybody for chiming in and for staying up late with us that night. But as that game was going on, I can speak from my perspective. And well, first of all, I'm thinking, I don't know how these guys on the ice are doing it. Hats off to not just the Panthers, but the Carolina Hurricanes, every athlete that was involved in the marathon that night, because that game went to, it went to the end of the fourth overtime. Yeah. That's a lot of hockey to be played in one night. And as far as games that have gone deep into overtime, it's one of the uniquenesses of our sport in that games can go on forever. And that quadruple OT can happen, but there's no manual for it. It doesn't happen very much. That's why there were only 5 games in the history of the league that had been longer, and 2 of those were in the 1930s. So what we saw in that game 1 doesn't happen every single day. But as it went on, and I'm sure you'd say the same thing, sometimes you get into the second overtime, third overtime, obviously the game's going to look a little different. It might slow down a little bit. You might have teams that are a little less willing to take risks because of what's on the line.
That's what it was, yeah.
And you just don't want to conserve energy. But I can say for a game that went deep into overtime, I thought the tempo of it was much better than a lot of previous instances of that I've seen. There were scoring chances. The goaltenders had to make big saves at both ends of the ice into double and triple and quadruple overtime. So those 2 teams were battling, and it wasn't just a sit back and wait for the opponent to make a mistake mentality. Both teams were going for it throughout those overtime periods. From my perspective, like I said, I'm watching there first, and I'm saying, okay, credit to every one of these guys because they're battling, and that is the ultimate physical test, what they're going through out there. For me, I never once thought about my own fatigue or anything. I was so locked into the game. The only non-hockey, non-broadcasting feeling that I had would have been in the last intermission of overtime. I thought to myself, it's been a really long time since I've had anything to eat. I'm getting hungry. But sure enough, the game would end late in the fourth overtime, and I was able to get back to the hotel to have a snack. But yeah, I started feeling hungry. That was the only non-hockey feeling that I was sensing at that point.
Congratulations, Doug. Just an amazing night, and yeah, it's not over. There's still work to be done. Thanks for joining us today, Doug. I appreciate it.
Anytime. Thank you very much.